Why should I care? Why should I be concerned? Why should I complain? When everything is right as rain, I know I'll fade like any old flower in any old garden. Even stars have an age, and summer is destined to usher the fall.
The mountain over there is a big symbol for me. I think mankind has always sought the mountains because they symbolize for him the eternal, the whatever power, the energy, whatever you call it. It has to do with seeking that unmet need in us of being at one with the eternal. Well, I was in California at Headland Center for the Arts working collaboratively with my friend who's a photographer, Pinky Bass. And we were trying to use clay and photography as a whole form instead of clay here and photography here. In doing all that photographing of my body, I started to notice that my body was getting older. And it's not noticing, it is noticing with my attention that I'm talking about. I had a choice here of whether to let it, to kind of keep that back here or whether to bring it up here and look at it. And I saw these flapping arms and the varicose veins, which I've really got a lot of them. And I ignore lots of the time because I don't want to live covered up. And then I also saw the bags under my eyes. I've got multiple layers, which I've had for years, but I hadn't let myself think about it. Well, all of this had a lot of energy for me to look at my body this way and to be present to my body. I'm very conscious of the fact that for me, art is about my internal self. And I mean the soul part of me. I didn't know when I first started that that's what it was about. But whether, you know, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. That's the way I see it. And so it's my truth. And I do see my art as explaining who I am internally, my way of going. And as I said this morning, I came across the Rodin picture of the old courtesan. And then 4 years ago, I was doing some experimental work over at Penland with a clay artist and formed a whole group of aged figures, or monotonous figures, I saw them then, because that was the space I was in. I was not energized, and I hadn't spent my years going after the energy that I truly believe is important. And these figures showed that to me of just the monotony of living without energy. But now I'm seeing these as death figures, figures that are not examining, not being present to their death. You see, that also relates to the whole idea of not examining your life, not living it before you die. You see, not saying life is exciting, and not affirming life. Not affirming life, which leads me to what I would say my conclusion about a year of study on this has brought me to, philosophically, is that I wish to be ageless now. My commitment is to be ageless. I had given my class an assignment to do their greatest fear. And after about 4 days of this, I realized that my greatest fear was loving people. Now, I've done a lot of thinking about that, and I'm trying different ways of bringing that. And I think I have to realize that that is about not only outward things, which I am doing. I'm giving myself more chances in the community. But also, that's about an inward thing, too, of being more, don't be afraid to be vulnerable on an even deeper level than I've been before. So I'm thinking that I'm acting it out, this commitment to being connected to my world. And then someone I was with not long ago gave me another idea, which was it's not only about people, it's about being open to nature, to whatever happens, you know. It's and that was an interesting thought to me, because I hadn't thought about it like that. I don't have as much trouble with that. Yes, I do. I do, because I get too busy, and that's part of all that thing about wanting to live an artful life, is don't be too busy so you can't experience the quietness here. You see, and it's not about being alone. It's about opening yourself up or out to whatever you're experiencing more. I think that's really what I'm talking about. I see these images now as moving towards their death without hope. You see, because they do look hopeless figures. And I don't want them to move that way. But I'm presenting them that way because that's really a statement I'm making right now about our culture. That we are in a fear space in our culture. And the reason I think that is because we are rushing around so doing things to keep ourselves from thinking about the big issues. And the biggest issue that man confronts is his mortality. And now I have got these rats that are coming to my feeder. And they have 2 babies. I'm sure there's a mama and a daddy and 2 young rats. And they are really posing a problem for me, because I've got that natural feeling that rats are bad. And how am I going to deal with these rats? And yet also I have this whole thing of wanting to be one with the universe. And how am I going to make those things fit together? And I keep thinking, if the rats would just keep in mind that they're not the only people living here, then maybe I could allow them to stay. But I'm not sure that they are able to do that, because they've got babies now, and that means we're going to have more babies. So I'm wondering if I can live with those rats. You know, whether they're going to be, they really are a problem for me. In fact, I find myself waking up at night and thinking about how I'm going to deal with these rats. So it's a pretty big issue. And they've been here today eating at my bird feed, and then they come and eat the duck food, and they are here. And now they are so at home, they do it in front of me. So what is that saying? I don't know. I wish that. I wish somebody would come and take them away. You know, I really wish, take this from me. I started off with impermanence. Impermanence was to be the whole, because that was my first experience about thinking about death. Well, life is so impermanent. That's the reason I'm doing my sculptures out of newspaper, because they're going to biodegrade. I'm going to put a very thin layer of clay slip over these, so that to me it's symbolic of us returning to dust. And I like that whole idea of them not being precious, and me not holding on to them, and me letting them go, and the burning of them. Because naturally there's a very deep connection to cremation in this whole thing and also of the idea of death being a trial by fire for us. Now, I see my art as potentiality for clutter in the world, but I need to do it, so why not do it so it will take care of itself instead of me having to break it up like I do the clay. For me, my path is about learning to be more and more honest with myself. And I think this was such a biggie for me because of the fear of death. In fact, I think this is what keeps us, that big question of, eternal question of death and what happens is what keeps us started the whole process of being dishonest with ourselves, you see. Because we're scared and we don't want to, we're kind of keeping ourselves busy. And I think it all comes about because we don't know the mystery that we're all heading for. I have a kind of a commitment that next year I will stop pushing myself to do things with the way I'm doing them now, which is that numbering and pushing. I'm going to try to live so in the present that the giving totally to the thing that I have in mind. That's what I mean by the artful life. That is one of the jobs I want to do, is I want to take a sander and sand my table down to where it has no finish, and so I can scrub it every day when I need to, and it can be an honest table instead of something on top of it. Do you know it's now not an honest table because it's got all this superimposed junk on it. The experience of using that table is great for me because that table connects me with other people. And I had planned to do a piece of sculpture where the connections were shown on a Lazy Susan, you see, of my connections with the people I live with, the people that are dead, the people that we connect so in the form of a round table to me. That's how the image. So that table is a real symbol. Do you know there's a Japanese book called The Unknown Craftsman? And it's about potters who made tea bowls. And they never put their name on them and nobody knows who made them. And the whole idea of allowing the fact that the use of that tea bowl is what gives it beauty, and the fact it's anonymous. You know, one thing I have learned from living is that nature is such a friend that when you have the baby, you love the baby, you're willing to stay up with the baby, everything takes care of itself. And that's what I think death is about, is that nature once again is making that seem the place you want to go. And so if you move into that space where there is nothing except no remembrance is what we're talking about, because there certainly will be use of ashes. I mean, but no remembrance of a past life or of the people that you loved or the connections you had. I think I would not be in a space where it would matter when I'm dying. But right now, I don't like the idea. You know, because I want to know what's happening down here after I leave. There are so many exciting things happening, you know. I really do believe that.
Hey little sparrow, what can you tell out the cold deep waters of the wishing well. Thrown many a stone just to watch it fall. If it ever hit the bottom, didn't hear it at all. Hey, little sparrow, tell. Hey, big river, where do you flow when you pass the borders of Mexico?